In a battle of states' economic competitiveness, Utah topped the rankings. This, according to a new report today. It's by the nonprofit American Legislative Exchange Council. The report is called Rich State, Poor State. It analyzes various economic indicators to rank states' economic competitiveness. These indicators include taxation and labor and regulatory policies. The report provides policymakers and the public with a tool to compare the economic performance of states. We talked with the nonprofit group for key takeaways from the report. Joining me is Jonathan Williams, Chief Economist at American Legislative Exchange Council. So let's just go over some takeaways for the Rich State, Poor State report. Now, the biggest winner seems like Utah again. What has the state done well?
Well, thanks for having me back. And, it's incredible news. Utah is now 16 years at number one in the economic outlook rankings of rich states, poor states. And there's so many positive things that you can point to for Utah over the years. But I mean, a lot of it is just a discipline to continue to get it right each and every year and make even small improvements year over year to stay at the top. And it's an incredibly competitive top when you've got states all across the country looking to cut taxes, become more competitive, grow jobs, and grow their population bases. Utah's, for whatever reason, been able to stay ahead for now more than a decade and a half. And I think, a few of the reasons that we point to in our report, and obviously there's many reasons why Utah does well, but, coming to some of the big ideas are, they've been cutting taxes aggressively now for over a decade and a half. They've already had a flat tax that they put in place just at the start of the rich states, poor states rankings in 2007, 2008. They continue to reduce that rate. They've also reformed their pension system, which is something that these massive unfunded liabilities that we document annually at ALEC total in the trillions of dollars, and they threaten bankruptcy for states like Illinois and others that we've talked about before. Utah's moved towards a 401k style portable individual or retirement account approach for their state workers, and it's really taken so many of these liabilities off the books for Utah. And then finally, an issue that all of us have been seeing huge upticks in our property taxes over the last several years because of assessments going up all across the country. Utah has been at the tip of the spear at trying to solve that issue. And it's something that we brought at ALEC to really make it model legislation. It's called their Truth in Taxation Law, which gets to the bottom of this thorny issue of property tax increases going up all across the country. So those are a few of the reasons. There's lots more reasons, but Utah's another economic powerhouse story this year in rich states, poor states.
Now we have to talk about North Carolina. It came in second this year. Used to be at the lowest 26, so a big change there. Maybe highlight what contributed to this big turnaround.
North Carolina is one of the biggest turnaround stories in the 16 years of rich states, poor states. And, one of the reasons that they've turned things around is they were one of the few states, with Utah being another, that has gone from a progressive tax system to a flat tax in recent years. And they took a tax code that was really 100 years out of date back about a decade ago and made some really important changes, including killing the state's death tax and trying to reduce business taxes. So North Carolina, by the end of this decade, under the current budget that was signed into law by even a Democrat governor and Republican legislators, is going to have a 0% business income tax rate. So they will be the first state to kill its business income tax under the current budget, which is just an incredible achievement.
Right. And of course, I want to talk a little bit about the losers. But before I do, is there other notable states as well that you found is worth highlighting for the winners in this edition?
Yeah, a few others. I mean, Arizona comes in at number 3, and just a year and a half ago, they were at number 13. So they've made incredible strides in the right direction through education freedom accounts for their students and parents, empowering that school choice in Arizona, as well as a flat tax and other items that they've passed recently there. A few others stand out, though, here in Virginia, where ALEC is based. Virginia comeback story has begun under Governor Glenn Youngkin, who Virginia had fallen dramatically just over the years in rich states, poor states. But now Virginia is one of the biggest turnaround stories, increasing 6 points this year in the rankings. Kentucky's another one, in Mississippi. I think 3 really turnaround stories that still fall in the middle of the pack of the rankings, but are some of the biggest gainers this year from where they were just last year.
Now, I'm based in New York, but unfortunately, it seems like by the ranking, it's at the bottom. What is it doing differently?
Well, the New York story hasn't changed a lot over the years. New York has been either 50th or 49th every single edition of Rich States, Poor States. And you don't have to have us to tell you what's the reason. New York is a anti-business, high-tax environment today. And that's why you've seen hundreds of thousands of New York residents vote with their feet, as we like to say, and go to one of the other 49 states. New York has been at the forefront of this outmigration, both from the city and from upstate and other parts of the state. And a lot of that reason is the New York budget is bloated. It spends far too much per capita. And of course, spending drives tax burdens at the state level. And this is something that New York needs to get under control.
I wonder if there's any pattern to whether blue or red states perform better. Is there?
Hey, we look at it from a policy basis and not a political basis, but I think, people can draw those conclusions, right? And that the legislators and the governors that are serious about free markets and limited government and federalism, really the ALEC principles, those are the states that are winning today. And whether they call themselves Republican or Democrat, we welcome everybody to these good ideas. And we've seen some Democrats, like I mentioned, in North Carolina, where they signed the budget that's going to kill their income tax on the business income tax side. We've seen others across the board try to jump onto this formula for free market success across the country. And it's something that I think is important for all Americans to unite around these nonpartisan principles.
Now, on an individual basis, the people living in the states that are ranked higher, what does it mean for them?
Well, I think it means hundreds, if not thousands, more in their pocketbooks every single year. And that's something that we've seen as the states that have become most aggressive at cutting taxes. In the last 2 years alone, we've seen almost half the states dramatically reduce their personal income taxes. Is really this tax cutting revolution has taken on across the states, and that these surplus revenues that we're seeing based on either federal dollars or natural surpluses have really given at least half the states this ability to become much more competitive, whether that's reducing property taxes at the local level through things like the truth in taxation idea I talked about, reducing sales taxes like in South Dakota, where they don't have an income tax to cut, so they had to cut something else, and that was the sales tax, or they're going down the route of cutting income tax rates. And so what that means for the individual is better job opportunities. We're seeing companies relocate from California and New York to other states and move their headquarters or their manufacturing operations. And it also means more in your pocketbook, whether that's to take that summer vacation you had to skip last year because of inflation, or put towards the egg prices that we've seen continually go up in the news and things at the supermarket. So at the end of the day, this isn't all about just this inanimate economy in a state. This is about individuals. This is about how people can become better off, and their families and their livelihoods can be better off through better government actions at their state level.
Jonathan, it seems to me that this ranking is quite fiscal policy based. Why is that?
Well, we look at the 15 different factors that are in rich states, poor states for a couple of reasons. And they include things like taxes, like you point out, but things also like regulation and labor policy. So, for instance, whether you needed to join a union or not to be an employee, right? And right to work laws is one of the things that we measure in this report. And it's a key indicator of how competitive states are for business growth and development. But these are things that my co-author, Arthur Laffer, who is a Reagan economist, of course, he goes back 50 years studying the policies that matter. And we focus on these 15 ideas because we know that they matter for job creation, for income growth, as we've talked about, for individuals. And of course, as people vote with their feet, why are they leaving one state and going to another? It's for economic opportunity. And so the things we look at in this report really are all about economic opportunity for all, as well as, I think, as importantly, there are things that state policymakers in all of the state capitals across the country, these laboratories of democracy, they directly control these variables. So you see all kinds of different ways that states are ranked these days. The ALEC report, Rich States, Poor States, is so important, though, because they're things that our ALEC state policymakers can absolutely control. And in a relatively short amount of time, in the case of North Carolina, in the case of Indiana, in the case of the states that have really made the biggest turnarounds in these last 16 years, you can make a big change in a relatively short amount of time at the state level.
Well, thank you so much today, Jonathan, for highlighting the key points from this report. It was a pleasure having you on.
Well, thank you so much.